industry news, machine reviews, interviews, and a lot more right here on the Weld Like Bazza podcast. The Weld Like Bazza podcast is sponsored by MS Welding, the #1 welding solution provider. mswelding.co.uk.
Welcome along to the Weld Like Bazza podcast. First of all, thank you to each and every single one of you that takes the time to listen to the show, because without you, the show is absolutely nothing. Right then, so straight into it this week. Big apology. We've had some time out and it's been much longer than I intended, and I want to give you a little bit of an explanation to that. So here we go. Episode 14 with questions and answers on the Weld Like Bazza podcast. So firstly, it has been far too long between shows, but there's a few reasons for it, and many of them positive, to be honest. Apart from the reason why I didn't do the show, the last show that was ready and scheduled to go out, we didn't go ahead with, and we pulled the plug completely. And the reason was that situation that happened in Southport, and it just wasn't right for me to put out a show for people to listen to when we had such horrific news. And then after that, and the aftermath of everything that followed, and then there seemed to be, every time I turned on the phone or checked the news on whatever platform I listened to or read, it seemed to be that everybody was saying there's no freedom of speech left in the UK. And I really had to think twice about coming online and doing a podcast and putting loads of effort into it, if ultimately people like us, people like podcasters, people who, you know, freely broadcast, were going to be shut down. And I've just had to let the dust settle. As well as that, also, I was invited to a meeting, an online meeting with some people from the creative team at Spotify. And that meeting took place in New York City, and I logged in, and it was an eye-opening experience. They gave me lots of insight into my very own show. They gave me insight into other people's shows as well. And it gave me lots of food for thought. And that's how I want to start this week. You'll all probably realize that we don't advertise. And I'm not sure if you're a non-premium member on Spotify, but I know that if you're a premium member, I do not think you get adverts when you listen to the podcast. If you do, you'll have to let me know about that. But as far as I'm aware, you don't get podcast adverts. I only put the adverts in for me and the business and whoever sponsors the show that particular week. So that's direct. And 9 out of 10 times, everybody knows who we're talking about that particular week anyway. So you're not getting bombarded with advertisements. But also, we launched a very small trial with doing this as a video podcast as well. If you go to YouTube and check out our very old MS Welding TV channel, which is, I do believe, if you go to YouTube /MS Welding TV, you'll find us. It's Dad's MS Welding logo. It's always been the same. And you can now listen to the podcast on YouTube as well as watching them. So because we went through the rigmarole of trying to find the right angles, how I was going to do it without it being such a trauma and 5 cameras to edit and things like that, we went through a period of really getting down with the pen and paper, having to think about what the show means to people, who wants to listen, and although one person might not want to watch, another person might want to watch because he or she might not want to listen. And we need to cover all avenues. So then we ordered the sign, and initially we were going to go with a UK company, and the price for the sign for a podcast that makes zero money was astronomical. Now, what you're probably seeing on LinkedIn, if you follow me there, is the brand new studio sign, the Weld Like Bazza studio sign in the office on the wall. And hopefully within the next few episodes, that is where the video episodes of the podcasts will take place. Not every single podcast is going to be a video podcast, and there's going to be a reason for that, because these kind of podcasts where I'm talking to you one-on-one are very valuable. But then when we get guests in and we want to sit them down and talk about things specific about the industry, it would be good to do that as a video podcast. Right, so that's all cleared up. There was loads of work involved in getting the sign. What logo were we going to use? Were we going to use the original logo? Were we going to use a new logo? What were we going to do? And this is why it's taken so long to come up with all those decisions, because we're also running a business at the same time. And we've just come to the end of my first financial year in business without Dad. So that's been traumatic. That's been traumatic in lots of different ways, but we got there and we're really happy, hopefully, at the moment. I think we're very happy with the results. But this first year has also brought to light lots of other things, like people that you just cannot trust. I always thought that, the welding industry and the people in it were very trustworthy. I thought it may be a little bit different to most other industries, quite small, and everybody seems to know everybody. You wouldn't believe people that would stab you in the back or take advantage of the fact that we recently lost Dad. And I'm not mentioning any names, but you would not believe that people would take advantage of those situations. And over the last year, people have. So we've had to weed those kind of situations out of our everyday business workings. Still, we've done incredibly well. We are still on the search for our second helping hand in the studio. And we've got somebody, hopefully, who's going to be working with us, going to start in those darker months of the year. It's going to be a give and take situation. They're going to come and try out working with us and the team. But also, it's going to be good for us to see how we can accommodate somebody else working with the company. But it's going to give us, a bigger area of scope. Ultimately, just getting on top of the repairs a lot sooner than we have been able to. I don't like the fact that we used to be able to turn things around in 24, 42, 36 hours. And now sometimes machines are coming in, I'm getting absolutely bombarded, and we're having to stretch those time limits a little bit in certain situations. And I don't like having to do that. So having that second pair of extra hands in the studio and the workshop is going to help us no end. Also, it's not been a great time to talk about the welding industry. It seemed to have a little bit of a lull earlier on in the year, and nobody seemed to want to come on the podcast. Now, ultimately, also, I think some of that is to do with people are very scared of saying the wrong thing. And, we don't promote the wrong thing. We don't say the wrong thing on this show. We speak the truth and the honest truth about the industry which we work within. I speak the truth regarding my very own business. And that's it, really. That's what we talk about. But I think people are very scared about coming on. I don't want you to be. If you think you've got valued conversational aspects that you want to talk about, you've got valued things you want to discuss with me about our industry and other things as well, then I would love to hear from you. We're now starting to get those booking forms filled back in, as well as quite a few other things. I've been invited out to Madrid, and I'm probably going to accept and go out to Madrid. I think it would be brilliant for the business as well as brilliant for the podcast. And also, we're opening ourselves up to more and more of those situations, things that we may not have done before, but now we've got that second helping hand coming into the workshop. It's going to give us extra time to get out there, spend time with the people that's really dedicated and supported us with their time and their efforts over this last 16 months. So thank you to each and every one of you that supported us as a business forever. Thank you to all of you that's put in the extra effort this last 16 months since we lost Dad as well. That's massively, massively grateful from all of us at work. And thank you to each and every one of you that's listened to the episodes, that shared it and spoke about it with your friends and your colleagues within the industry. You've probably all got a little bit to say about it. Some people might have a negative thing to say about it. That's going to be the way it is. Some people might have a positive thing to say about it. Also, that's great. Let's open the conversational floodgates right here on the Weld Like Bazza podcast. So, August, my holiday season. I want to discuss the reason why we always go on holiday. And it's a little bit of a story, and I think the stories, when we first initially started the podcast, was one thing that everybody loved to listen to. All right, so, okay, the reason why we always go away at the end of August, there's absolutely no word other lie about it, I went over that particular week so I could utilise the bank holiday Monday so I didn't leave Dad at work for too long on his own. And that also didn't leave too much of a time for Dad to mount extra jobs up in the back room and on site and kind of punish me for being on holiday. So that's always how it seemed. It seemed that I'd go on holiday, and if the longer I went on holiday for, the more trouble, grief and amount of jobs that I had waiting for me when I came back. And I never wanted to be in that situation. Going on holiday is a privilege and not something that we should feel bad about. I don't have very many holidays, as you can probably tell. And ultimately, we love going away at the very end of August. It's a fantastic downtime of the summer holidays. So we get to send Oliver out to Spain for a couple of weeks with his Spanish family, and he goes out there with his mum, then he comes back. This year was completely different for us because Oliver pretty much just moved straight in with us, with me, after he came back from Spain. I think he went back to his mum's for 2 days, and that was so he could spend 1 day and 1 night with his mate. So basically he's been here for the rest of the entirety of the summer holidays. It's been fantastic. He's been helping out at work, and he's been getting on with some of his stuff for his own stuff, his coursework going into year 11, and also he's really been focusing on his own fight camp. So all that said and done, the sun is also a much better colour at the very end of August. Now, normally we go to the East Coast and we've got a lovely destination where we surf quite regularly. We will be surfing there this winter. We'll be surfing there at Christmas, hopefully, depending on the swell, and hoping that we're not getting smashed by a massive storm. We will be surfing Christmas Day or maybe Boxing Day. You know, it's what we do. We love it. We love being in the ocean, and there's no place where I feel any more at home than being on a wakeboard or a surfboard out at sea, just soaking it up. It's where I am in my happy place, apart from in the recording studio and work. So ultimately, we went to Newquay this year, and it was the absolute best holiday that I think I've had in the past 10 years. Now, I've been all over the world. I've been skiing. I've been all over. I've been to Canada. I've done so much with my life very early on in my life. Not so much since Oliver's been with us, but definitely early on. And this was, without a doubt, one of the best holidays ever. The sun was that amazing colour. We went searching for new beaches and bays and breakpoints every single day. It was just great. And I'll talk about that in depth on another show, but it was brilliant. That only left me, though, the reality of 3 weeks of August to get everything wrapped up for my end of year. So August was absolutely brutal. But I think there's an uptick. I think there's a real good uptake at the moment in the business, in the industry. Everybody seems to be much more positive than they were. I always think it depends on your expectations in business. You know, what do you want out of it? What are you prepared to do? What are you prepared to do for your customers? And ultimately, what's having an effect on your business? We've been looking at that in depth over the last, 2 or 3 months. And ultimately, the biggest thing that affects my business is a positive attitude. So going forward, we're going to try and be really super positive, and it's showing. You know, things are busy. Well, I'm busier than ever. You know, a normal day at the moment is 12 and a half, 13 hours long. A normal day on top of that's probably 16 or 17 hours long. We've had no end of those this last year, but still, we've done it for the good cause of the business. Anyway, I want to do this show this week a little bit differently. I've thanked each and every one of you. It's been full of events, so on and so forth. So I want to introduce super duper Oliver Steele. Had his first fight 3 weeks ago and knocked the other guy out in round 3. Pretty phenomenal. The other guy was 25 years old and Oliver's 15. We didn't expect that result, so well done, Ollie. Fantastic. And for all of you, he thought he would come on and ask some of these questions that we get asked regularly. So here we go. Questions on the Weld Like Bazza podcast.
This is the Weld Like Bazza podcast.
This is episode 14 of the Weld Like Bazza podcast. Like, share and subscribe, or I'll come looking for you. Question number 1. How many times a week do you get asked, what is the best welding machine, and what is your answer?
So sometimes once a day, sometimes 5 times a day, I will get asked, what is the best welding machine? And my answer is always, well, what are you wanting to do with it and what are your expectations? Depending on the time of year and the time of clientele that are calling, they'll tell me that they've got 50 quid to spend and they want a double pulsed MIG welder with 900 synergic curves, 10 meter inch connections, waterproof wire feeder, and they want it to run off a 13 amp plug. So quite often we get those kind of questions. I always start with the customer. This is where we are as a company. I could have my back room full of an arsenal of machines, and that particular customer might actually want in his head one kind of machine, but I know that machine's not for him. That's down to me to say, I'm willing to walk away from a sale in this instance because I can't give you what you think you want. I know what I think will be better for you, and I can prove that scientifically and educationally. I can prove that, but ultimately, if you've got in your head that you want a double pulse machine that's waterproof, that'll run off a 13 amp plug, it's got 10 meter inch connections at 500 amps, with all the synergic curves on the planet, and you want to spend 50 quid on it, ultimately we're never going to get anywhere. So that's question number 1, and that's my answer to that.
Number 2. Obviously, I've been hanging about with you in the workshop quite a lot through the summer. One thing that I just don't understand is how did you get so good at fixing those circuit boards to component level? And how can your eyes still see those numbers at your age?
Right, so my circuit board career started as a kid. So I've told everybody those stories about the radio studio and the recording studio at home as a kid. Grandad helped me build all my own components. One of my first, I think, electronic projects at home as a teenager, done with Grandad and Steve, one of Nana and Grandad's friends, would have been, I think it was my mixer. And we built in auto starts to my mixing console. I also built an amplifier, and I built some sound to light lights for my woodwork and steelwork coursework at school. So yeah, I've always been involved in building my own circuit boards and repairing them. That started by buying kits, sound to light kits, amplification kits, mixer kits, LED light kits from Maplin's when Maplin's was still around, and you could walk into the shop and I think their kits were called Velleman kits, and you used to buy parts and then you used to build the components together, you used to test it, and you had all the instructions there. So that's how it started as a teenager. I remember when I was 16 or 17, I paid for my very own brand new bedroom carpet because I had burnt the old one with the soldering iron so much. So yeah, a little bit of a story there about my electronics PCB knowledge, how it started, and obviously it develops. I did electronics as part of my education on my apprenticeship, but obviously I've been repairing boards forever, and I've been in this industry for 29, 30 years or something. So yeah, ultimately all that time I was building digital and analog meter kits for my granddad, when I was 14 years old in the school holidays. So it's been something I have done forever.
Number 3. Another customer question. Can you just sell me a few rods? I only have a bracket to weld up at home.
Yeah, I regularly get asked this one. Somebody will come into the trade counter. How much is it for a packet of rods? And you tell them, what do you want to do? 9 out of 10 times they've got a machine that's not going to be able to weld any kind of welding rod, and they want to buy just a few. And I'm like, I can't open a packet and sell you a few rods, because what am I going to do with the rest of the packet? It's not a full packet then. It's useless to me. So on a weekly basis, I think we get that question. Somebody will call or drop in. I just want to buy a couple of rods. I've got a bracket to weld on my lawnmower. It happens all the time.
Question number 4. What do you think of the Liam Harrison fight that happened at the weekend?
Liam Harrison. Loads of hype about the fight. We pretty much followed his fight camp. Obviously, you've seen him exclusively in the gym, especially training with your own trainer as well. Just unprecedented power, skill set, mindset. I think everybody expected him to walk out winning at the weekend. Everybody was behind him. I think I've never known anybody attract so much positive attention. Everybody seemed to be rooting for him in that fight, and sadly, he didn't win. What really hurt me about is the look on his face right at the end. Like, what a way to bow out as well and put your gloves down. What a hero. We've only really known about him this last year. What an absolute hero. Top guy. You know, all the best with your future stuff. I'm sure we'll be seeing you in the gym, Mr. Liam Harrison. Awesome. Can't wait to catch up with the guys, actually, once they all get back from Denver and find out exactly what's been going on. But yeah, gutted that he didn't win. Gutted that he's retired, but what a way to do it. Brilliant. Fantastic.
Question number 5. What can you tell me about the launch of the brand new MS Welding product? I've seen them and they look pretty good.
Right. So, the launch of the MS Welding product. I want to do it a little bit more exclusively. So, I'm not going to do it on a podcast. The reason behind it is I was getting a little bit fed up and very frustrated. Not just a little bit frustrated, but very, very frustrated with a particular supply chain of a product that I sell a lot of. I need it. I'm a service-oriented company that specializes in high-end equipment, high-end sales, high-end goods, problem solving right to the very core, from the welding tungsten or the welding electrode or the welding tip, right back to the very start of it to the main supply. That's who we are. I just felt I was being let down a lot. And I know a lot of customers kind of say, a lot of suppliers will say, well, you know, everybody's having the same kind of problems at the moment. Things are taking 3 weeks longer than they're supposed to do. You know yourself, you're an intelligent person. Things are taking a long time due to the conflict everywhere. I had to take control of that particular situation myself, because I can't be being told that there's going to be a new product released 12 months ago and still waiting for that product. I can't be told that there's 50 of the products that I need coming into the country and the 5 weeks late, and I've exploited everything that I've got on the shelf. So I've had to take exclusive decisions over one particular product. For now, one particular product. I will be talking about it in depth. 1 or 2 people know about it already. There is 1 or 2 of them out there already. It's not welding machines. It's one particular part, one particular products that we do a lot with, and we've had to take control of ourselves. So look out for the news of the brand new MS Welding product.
Question number 6. Also, don't forget to tell everybody about the new Wildlight Bazza newsletters.
Yep, the brand new Wildlight Bazza newsletter. So ultimately, not everybody has time to leave a comment on Spotify after a podcast. I completely understand. I also understand that people who watch don't always have the time to log into YouTube, or they're not of that generation to comment on a particular show. I know that happens a little bit on LinkedIn, and I'm not interested in Instagram. If I spend 5 minutes on Instagram, it's too long, because I just get absolutely absorbed in it. 3 hours of my life disappears, and I've just been trolling through looking at everybody else's shit. None of it's any good. None of it's any use to me. So I need to step back from the Instagram world and just focus on the podcast and the YouTube channel, which is what we're going to do. But to keep in touch with you, I'm launching my very own Wildlight Bazza newsletter. In that newsletter, it's going to be free to subscribe to. You're going to get 5 points a week. There's going to be information things that I've picked up on, things that I want to talk about, and things that are coming up in the week's show ahead for you to read, with the relevant links and any special news that I want to relate to you. That is going to be available on the Weld Like Bazza website. I may also put that link on the MS Welding website. I do think it will be best placed on the weldlikebazza.co.uk website. That's weldlikebazza, all one word, .co.uk website. And you can click the link, put your email address in there, and subscribe to the brand new newsletter.
Question number 7. I personally don't know what to think about UFOs and UAPs, but what was your very first experience and what made you such a believer in the topic?
Me, as a kid, was always an overthinker. And I used to have the most in-depth conversations with my dad, your granddad, about the universe from a very young age. You've only got to ask your nana, she will clarify this. Some of the conversations that went on in life at the Steel House were absolutely mind-boggling. And it's some stuff now that I'm coming up against as I'm listening to a lot of very technical science, podcasts and stuff, especially about physics, and all these conversations me and my dad were having years and years ago as I was a child. So ultimately, I always sat back and looked at the sky, looked at the universe. Granddad was a person who bought me my first telescope, and I always sat back thinking, we cannot be the only ones. And I had a science teacher at school who was adamant that there was no other life out there. UFOs didn't exist. UAPs were just speculation. Nobody's ever visited this planet. We never came from anywhere else. Nobody's ever visited from anywhere else. And I just used to love having these conversations with him where he'd get really, really high rate and I'd be saying, but we've got no evidence of that. We've got more evidence, and especially now there's a lot more to read and look into. We've got actually much more evidence that there's a bigger likelihood that there's other civilizations, other life, that, there may have been a possibility that we came from somewhere else. So I used to have these conversations with Grandad. Then we went record shopping one Saturday or Sunday together, and while we were in HMV, we bought a UFO video, VHS it was. And I remember there was a particular part in there where Bob Lazar was in the desert in his Honda that he put a rocket pack on the back of, and his voiceover was saying, that we were that we held alien technology and we were flying alien craft. That story's not changed in 30 years. I'm a big believer in the Bob Lazar stories and all that. And one night I went to a UFO meeting at a local pub. Everybody was welcome. It was in the back function room. I went with Nana and Grandad, and we went along, and there was a UFO kind of group there giving a speech about UFO sightings in the area. Ilkley Moor at that time and Addingham Moorside had been experiencing a hive of apparent UFO activity. And there were some Americans at this meeting at this little pub in Morley. And afterwards, Grandad said, what do you think to the Americans? I said, I don't know. I said, I reckon they're from a local RAF base, and they've come to see what we're saying and they've come to see what we know. They weren't local, that's for sure. I'd hate to say that they were the men in black, but yeah, these Americans were there listening to the entire meeting and conversation and getting a look at everybody who were there. So I was like, right, it's got to be true then. It's got to be true. There's got to be something. There's got to be something. It's got to be happening up at Addingham Moorside, up in Ilkley kind of area. There's got to be something going on. One particular night, I wouldn't go to sleep. I was still a kid at this point. I wouldn't sleep, and my dad said, right, get in the car, come on, we're going to go see what we can find. And we went out on this drive, And we were bombing down this road. And my dad had at this particular time an Isuzu Trooper. And he just knew how to make this 4x4 shift. It was great. And we're bobbing into Addingham Moorside. And it's a really funny thing. You just see a sign on the road. It just says, this way to Addingham Moorside. So he swung like this 90-degree turn. And you start going up this country road. It's all pitch black. The trees are hanging over this little road. And all of a sudden, don't forget, I've been reading and listening to stories about cows being abducted by aliens and mutated, right? All of a sudden, this mist just rolls in. Now, I don't want to make this sound any more dramatic than it was. I don't think I'm that good of a storyteller to tell you just how dramatic this event was. So we're in this 4x4. I'm sat with my dad, who's still my hero, and he's bombing up this road. And this mist comes from nowhere. It's the thickest mist I have ever witnessed in my entire life. It's thicker than the cloud cover that I witnessed when I ran up Snowdon, right? It was super thick. All the cows in the fields seemed to run towards the roads. This is no exaggeration. They seemed to run and congregate right near the roads where the cars were. And I remember saying to Dad, I don't like this. This is a bit eerie. This. And I think we should turn round. And I remember absolutely shitting myself. And my dad's going, no, we're here now. We're fucking here now. And we're driving up this road. And the fog got so thick that we couldn't see in front of the vehicle because all the light did is bounce off the fog. We're travelling super slow, concentrating on the road ahead. And all of a sudden, this fucking runner came bounding down on the same side of the road, out of fucking middle of nowhere, out of this fog. He had glasses on, he had his running vest, and I went, fucking hell! And he just fucking appeared from nowhere. And Grandad rolled about laughing, but I think we both shit ourselves. And although we didn't see any UFOs that night, or any UAPs or anything weird apart from the cows congregating and the mist, which might be some kind of a cow phenomena. I don't know. I'm not a vet. I'm not a cow expert, but it was eerie. But since then, I've always had this idea that it's got to be true. And my reason in thinking it is, as far as I'm aware, we still are under the laws of physics and rules that we cannot create energy or destroy it. We simply change it from one form to another. So we can't destroy energy, okay? And we can't create it. We simply change it from one form of one thing to another. And I think that in itself means that we can never destroy anything. So there's always this energy there, which means it can't just surely be on our planet. And there's been loads and loads and loads of really complicated scientific experiments taking place. And there's loads of people now that testify that say, I've seen a UFO and I've seen an alien. So I don't know, but I do believe it.
Question number 8. You've recently upgraded to the new speed glass helmet. Do you like it so much because it makes you look like a spaceman?
Right, so I recently upgraded to the new speed glass helmet. Yes, I did. Do I like it so much because I look like a spaceman in it? To be honest, felt very guilty when I took the brand new speed glass helmet on, because my old speed glass helmet was the one that my dad said I had to have. And before that, I was a big believer in a different brand of helmet. And I really did believe in this particular helmet. And I never really believed in the speed glass brand as such. I always thought it was very expensive for what I would potentially use it for. But then I started working on a particular contract, and ultimately I just needed something with the best protection and the best visibility image-wise. And we went for the 9100 XXI, which was at that point, true colour was the thing, the inward. And I loved that helmet. Obviously, thanks to 3M and SWP, I've got my new one now, and I love it. I've just not managed to make it as perfect as I want to yet before I start talking about it. Ultimately, getting everything dialed in on the app exactly as I want it is unique to me. That's how I want my helmet to operate. So that is, and it does make me look a little bit like a spaceman, you're right. So yeah, I love it. Absolutely amazing. For the size of the helmet, probably the comfiest helmet that I have ever worn. But it did take about half a day to get everything set up perfect. But that's something that you only do once. So yeah, love it. Love my helmet. Loads of new helmets out at the moment. I know that SWP's got this fantastically graphicked Chaos helmet, and I didn't realise they were going to do a PAPR version. That's the one that's currently out and about. People have got that helmet to have a look at the moment. But there's also going to be a non-PAPR helmet version of it as well. Cannot wait to get that in stock. I'm really looking forward to putting it in a display cabinet designed purely for welding helmets in the new reception area. Because ultimately, you will see now more and more people going B2B websites. We're going to have a website. We're going to do this. I'm holding off on a B2B website for as long as I possibly can. You may be able to buy Weld Like Bazza merchandise and exclusive things online, maybe around Christmas time. But ultimately, we still want people to come and have a chat, have a really nice coffee. I know that Gorgeous Dave keeps on telling me, get some more capsules bought for that coffee machine, then I can have a proper coffee. So I do want people to come, have a coffee, have a chat, have a chat about what we can do, watch some videos that we've made, have a look at some of the stuff in the workshop, have a look at the work that's going on at the moment, and then, walk away with a free coffee. I think that's a way for me. Come and have a chat, see what we're all about.
Question number 9. Before I go, what made you love surfing and water sports so much? The smile when you're about to get smashed by a massive wave is awesome.
Right. So my surfing started not long after you were born. So quite simple. I loved wakeboarding to the point where Wednesday nights I used to finish work early and go ride until I could ride no longer at Sheffield Cable Water Park. And then weekends I would be on the lake all weekend. If I were working on a Saturday night and a Saturday morning, I wouldn't go to the lake, but I would go and ride pretty much all day Sunday. And it started out as some friends invited me along to take piss because basically they'd got loads of practice in. They could get off the jetty. They could launch off the dock. They could get round the first corner. They thought they were really cool. And they took me along, didn't explain how hard it was. I was just, Billy Big Balls at this time. Yeah, I'll do all. Yeah, perfect. And they just laughed at me getting pulled off the jetty, off the dock and ragged along the lake. But ultimately I was like, just so determined, I would keep hold of the handle of the cable on the pulley and I would let it pull me along face first to the first corner of the lake until I had to walk all the way back and start again. And that happened for a week until I managed to launch off the dock and get round the first corner. Once I managed to do that as a wakeboarder, I was addicted and I became better than all of them very, very quickly. So my friends stopped going, so I made loads of new mates at the lake and we had just an amazing, I must have been there for 5 seasons, 6 seasons. And then I met your mum and then we had you and then we went wakeboarding a little bit every now and again. But we didn't have the time. Obviously, we're dedicated to doing other stuff. But then, obviously, wakeboarding hurts when you get it wrong. And it never bothered me when I was younger, but I've got a responsibility now of a son and a business and other people to look after. So I didn't really want to be getting absolutely smashed up wakeboarding. Don't forget, I knocked myself out by hitting the water so hard more than once, landed in the lifeboat once, broke 2 ribs hitting the water so hard, getting a trick wrong. constantly pulled my shoulders and my arms. So it wasn't like I didn't do this sport without any injuries. And I couldn't afford to be doing that. And especially as Grandad got poorly with some of his earlier problems, surfing seemed to be something that I could jump on when we went on a holiday or away for a couple of days and then almost forget about and take it at a much more leisurely pace until I caught my first big nasty swell and ended up being washed up on the beach like I've been stuck in a washing machine. And then I thought, actually, this is just as much fun. And not saying that I love the smash ups, but it were great. And then there's a different side to it now. And I really enjoy getting right out into the ocean, paddling out there, paddling past all the waves, monitoring where the break points are, monitoring, where the pipeline is, looking for the swell, learning how that particular break works, and then just sitting there sometimes 20 or 30 minutes waiting for the perfect wave to come along and jumping on it. And if you catch it and you manage to ride it a little bit and get close to the beach, then I don't think there's any better feeling for me at the moment. I still love wakeboarding. And as you know yourself, when you see me on the lake having a mad 30, 40 minutes, I still pull the old trick and I'm great with the surface tricks and stuff. And I love it. And there's no better feeling than feeling the water run through my fingers as I'm holding onto the cable at 30 miles an hour. I think it's brilliant. It's absolutely amazing. But then also nothing better than laying on your surfboard, just, watching the water, chatting, especially when you and I's together and we're doing it and you're on your board and I'm on mine and we're kind of out in the ocean, just counting the sets, counting the waves, watching the pipeline, maybe waiting for it to go quiet with the people or at the break point and stuff. It's brilliant. And at the moment, I think outside of work and the podcast and you watching you fight and watching you train and develop, and Lewis got man of the match this weekend, his first ever match of the season. Playing professionally at 6 years old. Just brilliant. Just watching all of you. But there's no other better feeling than for me in something that I love to do than catching that wave, waiting for it to be perfect. Putting the effort in, hopping on it at the right time, not getting catapulted off, and surfing, doing something that I absolutely love. I think in later life, I think I prefer to spend pretty much 90% of my time in a wetsuit. So yeah, we've got some stuff to do. But yeah, that is the reason why I love surfing. Brilliant then. Some questions, and I hope I've answered them to the very best of my ability. Thanks for joining me on this week's Weld Like Bazza podcast. We're going to get back to it. It's going to be much more regular. We're going to try and get one out every couple of weeks if that's enough for you. I'd like to do one every week if possible, but we need the content and the stuff to talk about. If you have a product or you have a story or you have something that you want to talk about on the Weld Like Bazza podcast, maybe you're even a welder. You want to tell me some of your welding stories about being out in Canada or maybe America or, doing a pipeline in Bradford. Who knows? If you want to come on the show and talk about your stuff, then we would love to hear from you. Head on over to the Weld Like Bazza website. Really easy to find it. weldlikebazza.co.uk, and there's a homepage there. On the homepage is all the links of the platforms where you can listen to me currently. Also, we're going to get that brand new newsletter form added to that page so you can sign up, get industry and welding industry, exclusive welding industry insights straight to your mailbox every single week where you can read it in your own time. And also there'll be some basic show notes of up and coming shows in there too. Thanks very much. This has been episode 14 and it's been so good to be yet again behind the microphone talking about what I love. The industry in depth is just something I live and breathe for. So yeah, brilliant. Thanks a lot. Thanks to each and every one of you for listening. And I can't wait to catch up with you in the very near future. Thanks a lot.
This is the Weld Like Bazza podcast.
Stoke the fire.